Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond Pain podcast with myself, Joe LaVacca, and Joe Gambino. In today's episode, we have yet another very special guest for all of you, Michael Stella. Mike Stella is an athletic trainer and owner of the Movement Underground out in Long Island, New York. He caters specifically to athletes of all levels and professions. And in this episode, Mike shares his pain and injury journey. He gives insights into how he individualizes care for each and every athlete, how to navigate the social media world with research and so many countless opinions. And of course, Mike shares his biggest piece of advice that he gives to injured athletes. We hope you enjoy this episode and all future episodes of the Beyond Pain podcast. And if you do, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, share this with someone else. It will really help the podcast grow. Without further ado, here is the episode with Mike Stella.
Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense. Welcome back into the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino, and I'm here with your other Joe as a host, Joe LaVacca. You can hit us up on Instagram whenever you'd like. We love to chat. Send us a DM. My Instagram handle at Joe Gambino DPT. LaVacca is at strengthinmotion_PT. This show also live on YouTube, Cups of Joe_PT. And you could also find us the Beyond Pain podcast on Instagram. And we're here with the handsome Mike Stella. He is an athletic trainer. He's a performance coach. He is also from New York. So we are three people from New York here. I love it. We're also three Italians. Mike did tell us before we started this that he feels like a fake Italian now after going to Italy. But we'll let Mike take the floor. Tell us a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit more about that trip to Italy, and we'll go from there.
I appreciate the kind intro. Yeah, I did just get back from Italy, which was amazing. It was actually my honeymoon, which was super exciting. It was our kind of like bucket list trip made into a honeymoon, which was super fun. So we went to Venice and Rome and Naples, the Amalfi Coast, and we just kind of like, it was one of those vacations where I was like, I needed like 4 days off when I got back that I didn't get because I was exhausted. I was like averaging like 40,000 steps a day. We just like, my wife and I, Kate, who's also a physical therapist, go figure, but we just decided, okay, we're just going to see all of Italy in 5 days. That's what we're going to do.
Well, that's a normal trip.
Right. But it was great. It was great. I got my steps in. I realized I am not actually Italian. I am a dumb American. That's what I learned. They are so much more cultured and classy, although cigarettes are still very big over there. I was shocked to see that. A lot of people smoke cigarettes.
They're natural though, right?
It's like their bread is better for you. Their cigarettes are better for you. I'm like, I'm not sure that's really the case, but I just was like, man, if I really want to be Italian, I just got to get like a Vespa so I can just go chow with a cigarette like sticking out of my mouth. But it was awesome. We had a great time. And yes, I am an athletic trainer by trade in ATC. Very proud of that. And do my thing here at the Movement Underground.
And what is the Movement Underground like?
The Movement Underground is my business. It's my hybrid clinic / gym, like performance training studio, which we just relaunched or upgraded our space in September. So we're still like, we were doing really well with the therapy side, and that was kind of always our bread and butter, and like renting space out of other gyms, like a lot of us do, to get started with our clinic businesses. And then we decided to take the plunge and jump into the performance arena as well. So we have a couple of strength and conditioning coaches on staff that help me run and implement, like the integrated training and rehab programs. We've got like a little recovery lab that we call it. We got infrared sauna, red light therapy, cold plunge, so we're trying to have it be that one-stop shop. It's about 4,200 square feet. So it's not huge, but it's way bigger than, what we were in prior. So it's exciting. It's really a lot of fun.
4,200 square feet in New York. Maybe not so much on Long Island, but that's a good amount of space.
It's a good, on Long Island, it's expensive too, so it's New York prices, but again, you gotta take the risk sometimes, it's as uncomfortable as it was, my sublease was ending and it was just like, okay, do I just go for another sublease and do this again? But I didn't really like where I was at because it was kind of like a toxic environment. I really wanted a little bit more control over, the whole experience that my clients and athletes and guests have. So we decided to go for it and take the plunge.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful location. And speaking of rent, the craziest thing since I've been going back and forth to Colorado is realizing that Courtney and Total Health Solutions, where Courtney is, she pays about the same for probably almost an equal size space that you have, Mike, that I pay for I think 8x8 space that I have where I can like reach out my hands and touch the walls. And I'm getting a deal, I feel like. I'm like, whoa, I can't believe I'm getting this deal for this 8x8 space that I go to Courtney, who has like a warehouse and a gym. And she's like, yeah, I think we pay about the same each month in rent. And I'm like, well, we're both getting deals then. I'm really happy for us.
You might be getting a better deal, right? It might be a better deal out in Colorado. That's awesome, though.
That's awesome. So, Mike, I have one question for you before we get to the main content today. And somehow we have a coffee theme on this podcast here. So, first question for you is, how do you take your coffee?
I take my coffee, I take it two different ways. My first cup of the day is a cappuccino, usually. I have an espresso machine at home that was actually given to me by a former client who's an NBA player. And it was like we used to work together over the summers. He's a local guy from Long Island, Tobias Harris. And it was the end of the summer. He was heading back to training camp and he gives me this coffee machine. I was like, and I didn't know that it was $1,000 coffee, like espresso machine. I had no idea. I'm like, oh man, that's really nice. Thank you. Cause I always had like a Starbucks cold brew, right? Which I drink black. So he gives me this machine. He leaves. And then I like looked it up on Amazon later and I was like, holy fuck, this is $1,000. Like that's insane. So that was really cool. So I make a cappuccino in the morning. And then I have I'm a little bit of a coffee snob as well. So in the facility, we have a Smeg coffee machine. You ever seen those before?
Fancy.
So it goes bean to cup. So you just put the whole beans in the top with the water. It grinds it. It tamps it. It's like, it's got like a little barista inside the machine, I guess. And then it pours you could do a ristretto, you could do espresso, or you could do just a full draw. But this is just plain black coffee. That's it. It's fantastic.
I'm a little envious over here. Not gonna lie.
I told you, Joe.
You guys want to come lift? You gonna come work out and grab some coffee, man? Like I said, I'm trying to build a one-stop shop.
When I'm back in New York, I'm on my first stop now. I actually just shifted to cold brew season. I make my own cold brew here at home, and that's so now we're in a good spot.
I never had success making my own cold brew. Like I do it. I've done it. I've done the mason jar version. I bought the special thing for making cold brew, and like when you drink like a really good like Stumptown cold brew or something like that. And just like, oh my God, it's like, it's almost so good that it's sweet by itself. I have never, ever been able to reproduce that. It's so disappointing.
Yeah, I guess, you have high standards, Mike.
I was telling Joe, maybe.
You're classing up the whole podcast already. I mean, you're dropping coffee names I've never heard of. We got multiple camera angles. I mean, this is really, really great. Really, there it is.
The 6 people watching this on YouTube are gonna love the camera change right there.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. I don't know. It's who I am.
I think we all are here, right? I mean, that's why this podcast even exists in the first place. Just straight up nerd out.
That is true.
Well, I appreciate you guys inviting me on. This is awesome. It's always good time talking with both you guys.
Yeah, and as Joe was saying, like one of the biggest reasons that the podcast exists is, as the name states, to help people move beyond pain. And one of the things we really wanted to highlight with clinicians like yourself was their personal stories and experiences with it. So one question I really have for you, Mike, knowing a little bit about your injury history, which if you're comfortable sharing with people, we'd welcome that. But what is your pain story or current relationship with pain?
Well, the last couple of days, I have this crazy stiff neck. I posted on my stories and Instagram the other day. I was like, I barely turn my head to the left, although I did just get some treatment, so I'm feeling a little bit better. Luckily, I know some people, which is nice. But my pain story is kind of the classic athletic trainer story. Is I was an injured athlete. I played lacrosse in in high school. Well, I played a lot of sports. I did football, track and field, bowling, lacrosse was like the big four sports for me in high school. And I was really good, but I was a good athlete. I wasn't necessarily the best lacrosse player, like skill set wise, but I was a really good mover. And so, I think at the time, and I wasn't like training at any special facility or anything, but I could run like a 4.6 40, 4.5, just under 4.6. So I could do a lot of stuff with my legs and make a lot of things happen. And so I started getting a lot of attention, like college recruiting, and started believing the hype a little bit, and then I blew my knee out. So it was a collision injury. I tore my ACL, PCL, MCL, meniscus, and had a tibial plateau fracture. So I basically dislocated the knee, and that was really my introduction to really athletic training and sports medicine and physical therapy as even a potential career. But I think really, and it was the classic surgery, rehab. I went to Marist College that was the last D1 that was going to offer me any scholarship money. And what I then developed was a really insidious relationship with pain and movement, because all of a sudden I was like the man on my high school team. And then, obviously that season got derailed for me by the injury, but all of a sudden now my next, basically opportunity to play is Division I lacrosse with a lot of really good, talented players. So it was kind of like the big fish in the small pond, and now you're the small fish in the big pond. But not only that, but like my one key attribute, which was my legs, was kind of like not there. I never really got into the strength and conditioning maybe the way that I should. It was kind of obsessed with, okay, 6 months, I'm going to go back. And I played hurt, and I still had swelling, knee contracture daily. I was like hobbling around. It just led to a lot of other injuries. But more importantly, it kind of led to an identity crisis for me. So I was really depressed. I struggled with anxiety, like performance anxiety. I was so worried about, do I belong here? Or what do my teammates think of me? Is this coach who, took a chance on me to give me scholarship money disappointed? Or it was just a lot of like the internal struggle is kind of what became my why for getting into this career, because I feel like I slipped through the cracks in the healthcare system. Because what happened was every time I would go to like the athletic trainers at my school, it's like, because I didn't get hurt at Marist, they were kind of bootstrapped a little bit. They're like, well, we really can't, like, quote unquote, take over your rehab because you didn't get hurt here. Right. And so a lot of it at a mid-major level is a resources issue. So, not to blame them, but they were helping me, just not in a more in-depth way. And then for strength and conditioning, it was kind of like, you're on your own, kid. Like, do your basic program that you had from your PT back home. And I just never really got there. So that kind of became my why, is like, nobody's going to fall through the cracks on my watch. If there's something we can do, I'm going to figure out a way to get it done or help this person move forward. But that really became the ethos, I guess, behind why I do what I do and how I got to where I am now. It's like, I joke, but it's like now I am the person I needed 25 years ago. That's kind of what happened for me.
That's a really interesting way to put it, because that's actually what I was kind of thinking. Like, your story and your experience has set you up to be so successful now with a lot of your clients. And
right.
That word identity that you used, I really appreciate that, because I think that's where a lot of people's stories end up for me. And I kind of take leaps with that. It's sort of, I hear you, and it sounds like you don't have that purpose or that driving force. So when you were going through that, what was the biggest thing to help you kind of like shift back your focus onto who you were and find your strengths again? Was there a person, a mentor, a moment in time for you that kind of helped you refocus and shift that perception?
You know what it was, man? I think in my college years, I became so disheartened, and like I really did struggle. And again, at the time, if you would ask the college version of me, or like, are you depressed right now? I'd be like, oh no, well, I'm good. But like looking back on it now, it's like, okay, I was ruminating over it. I was like, I started becoming obsessed with figuring out why I couldn't reach my prior level of performance. And so even for like, it really wasn't until graduate school, right? So after college, I worked for the University of Florida in their sports medicine department, which was an amazing experience. I got to work. I call it sports medicine in a bubble because there really is no budget or financial restrictions. It was whatever you need to do, you do for your athletes, and give them the care, the time. You know, we had a lot of resources financially, equipment. Like, I mean, again, it's just whatever you need to do, you do. So that experience kind of like started getting me back into, okay, well, maybe what I've been trying is only scratching the surface of what I could have done or could do to get my body back. And so a lot of what I was learning at that time, or even continuing education wise, was truthfully very selfishly motivated to try to figure out my own issues. I mean, dude, I'm talking like 4 years after my knee reconstruction, I still couldn't straighten the knee all the way or really flex it all the way. I was still having chronic pain and chronic referral pain, even down into my ankle. Like I had a saphenous nerve entrapment. My knee was a freaking nightmare. And so again, I just always was trying to like work around it. I was very afraid to load it because everything I had been told prior to that was, you got to be careful with it. You know, I had a experimental quote unquote procedure for the knee because I was ACL and PCL compromised. So, you know, for me, it was just a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and really just like a dark place. But in that dark place kind of was the seeds of the obsession, I guess, with movement. And then that parlayed into the obsession with like manual therapy stuff, because my boss at Florida was like, oh, dude, your scar doesn't move. Like, you got this, you got that. Like, here, and he started working with me. And all of a sudden, I started seeing more progress over those few weeks working with Andy than I had seen in the previous 4 years. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why didn't anybody do this with me? I was pissed. I was really pissed. So, but that started getting me back into fitness a little bit. I started working with the strength coaches at Florida a little bit more. And then my graduate work was I was just obsessed with manual therapy and strength and conditioning and movement and biomechanics and like a lot of that heavy mechanical stuff, because I was like, there were so many things that I could have done that I missed, that nobody, and that all the people I went to missed also. And it really pissed me off. I mean, I was just angry. I was an angry chip on my shoulder, something to prove. I felt like I had been cheated. So a lot of it was just wrapped up, and that obviously manifested into my personal life as well. You know, I was very distant in my relationships, isolated myself a lot. And so like people ask me now, like, hey, Mike, what do I have to do to learn and know what you know? I was like, oh, are you willing to sit in a dark room with like a single exposed light bulb with like water dripping down and just be in a dark place for a decade? And that dark place for me was reading research and taking courses and like trying to invest in like understanding that there's a lot more to this than just like your basic Therex exercises and like stim and ice, you know?
Yeah, it's a hard story, right? And it's you obviously overcame it. You're in a great place now, and I think there's a lot of good that came from it, not just for yourself, but
oh sure,
the people that you work with, right? What do you feel like that the turning point was when you were working with that guy at the University of Florida? What do you feel like was the turning point for you where you were like, well, now I start to feel like I'm on the right track, I'm feeling better, you get out of this dark place?
Andy Clark opened up a whole world to me that I had previously been very closed off to. Because again, I don't know how it goes in PT school, but at my program at Marist for athletic training, which used to be an undergrad program, so you can get your ATC license with a bachelor's degree at the time. Now it's a master's degree, but at the time, like, we looked at manual therapy as almost like, oh, we don't do that. That's like, you go see a massage. You want a massage? You go see a massage therapist. Like, we're not going to rub you. We're going to do like stim and ultrasound and like cool modalities that they can't do, And I was like, such bullshit. But so I had almost like this, like, I don't know, like this air of superiority that like putting my hands on people was like below me at that point. And then I get to Florida, and the mindset there was, they were like, okay, well, what kind of a, manual therapy experience do you have? And I was like, I know what effleurage is, like that's about it. And he's like, okay, great, perfect. We call that a flush, and you're going to do that 50 times a day on these track and field athletes. And I'm like, oh, okay. And like I'd be on the other table. I wasn't even allowed to work with injured athletes yet. And I'm looking at him like working with these guys and like completely changing their movement like instantly with his hands. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? I'm like, why didn't I learn that in school? That's insane. Like I just watched him improve this athlete's hip mobility, completely erase this dude's pain in minutes. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I already was like skeptical of what I've been taught because I clearly couldn't get better. I'm like, okay, this is what I need to learn now, because that's clearly the direction. And again, even at that time, this is like in the mid to late 2000s, right? So that was before kind of all the, you can't break stuff up. So that was a lot of what we thought and what we were doing and using tools, and it was just super cool for me. But yeah, that was the turning point, because I think that was the moment I realized that school did not teach me everything, that there was still a lot that I had to learn. And I was just like, great, thank God. Because if this is all there is and I can't get better, I like, what hope do I have to help other people, So that was kind of like where I became like the Con Ed junkie. And then those things, again, helped me figure out what I needed to work on.
Yeah, I think that even your story around manual therapy too, Mike, I really appreciate, especially in today's, social media environment, both as a clinician and, patient. Because I think that there's such this dichotomy where if you're going to a provider who's doing manual therapy, oh, you should not be getting manual therapy. You should be loading it and exercising.
Right.
And if you're a clinician, oh, don't take manual therapy courses. Don't do this. Do something else instead. And I think your story just reflects like that there's a harmony there. And I think that how we've even spoken about manual therapy here on the show, which Joe can't even do because he's all virtual now, right? Is essentially using it as this like diagnostic, using it as an assessment, using it as just a way to connect with people, right? I mean, when people are bringing so many things to the table and you've shared your emotions, and I'm sure your athletes and your clients do the same thing, to just be able to put your hands on someone, move it around and say, hey, I think you're going to be okay, and this is what we need to do, and this is what I'm feeling, I think gives a lot of reassurance. But one thing I wanted to just ask you quickly with this whole like anger thing, right? Which makes sense to me because, that's, a feeling of fairness, right? You have a sense of right and wrong, justice comes to mind with all this like anger, right? And it does seem like you were not given what was right, during your rehab process, but anger can be such a powerful emotion. How did you turn it into good? And what do you think was the driving force behind that? Why didn't you just like, go to the bar, put on your Florida Gator t-shirt, and then, never leave?
Man, that's a really good question. I think, that kind of starts going down like what I was dealing with personally, like family wise at that time. My mom was sick with cancer at the time. So immediately it was, even my siblings, whom I love, weren't really in a headspace to help her. And so for me, it was get back to New York and have to be the hero. And a lot of, not the hero, but like I had to put all my own shit aside and just get shit done. And so it almost, and again, I look back on it now and it's like, maybe that's not the best coping mechanism to deal with your own depression. But what it did was kind of completely put the blinders on for me for everything that I was dealing with. And it allowed me to just execute for somebody else. Right. And so I think that's part of like what we all do with our patients sometimes even, right, is like maybe we don't have all of our own shit figured out, but we can be this person for somebody else a little easier sometimes than we can do it for ourselves. Right. So I think that was part of it for me was I had to serve my family. I had to serve my mom and help her. And a lot of my own anger just kind of became like nobody's going to be able to help me. Nobody's going to give me a leg up. Nobody's coming to my rescue. So the anger just got it just became the motor. It became the gasoline in the motor. It just is what drove me. It was like, I have to learn more. I have to be the best. Oh, I guess I'll just switch to camera 2. I don't know why that happened, but I had to be the motor. It had to be me that was going to get it done, and that's kind of what happened. It was just, again, I don't remember being quote unquote angry, but it's like really the only way I can describe like the chip on my shoulder. Like I had something to prove. I had to prove everybody wrong that I could, be an athletic trainer and make a good career out of it. And then even at that time, like I kind of started realizing, oh shit, like how am I going to survive on 30 grand a year and work 80 hours a week? Like that's kind of where I was bartending on the weekends to like fund my career, even though I had 2 master's degrees at that point, So it was just those late 2000s were just like a super dark time. I don't even really remember a lot of it, to be honest. I just worked a ton. Anytime I wasn't working, I was trying to help out my mom. And then when I wasn't helping her, I was sleeping. So it was just like no time for anything else. And maybe that was my saving grace. I didn't really adopt any like self-destructive stuff. I was just kind of like out there doing what I had to do.
Yeah, I would say kudos to you, because I think in situations like all this, right, it's like 2 ways you can respond. One is like retreat, right, and then play the woe is me card, or 2, go out and kind of attack and put that chip on your shoulder, make the changes that you kind of need to, right, and put yourself in another situation. So I think it's pretty cool. I didn't know really that much about any of this stuff right before we had this conversation. So it's cool to see. I have a similar story with my back pain and kind of wanted to get better, but I don't feel like it's anywhere near as deep as this goes. But I do want to switch gears here just a teeny bit. I kind of want to bring in like a little clinical question here, and just kind of revolving around the same theme of manual therapy, because I think we all may have slightly different rationales for why we may have used it in the past, or how much we use it. I know for me personally, when I was in clinic, maybe it was like 10 minutes at most I ever did for manual work in a 60-minute session. I did it kind of like Joe said, for diagnostic reasons, and also kind of like builds trust in my eyes, as far as like connecting with the patient, showing that like I think there's a therapeutic touch to touch, in a sense, right? Like you make them feel a little bit better just by putting your hands on it, and then you go load it afterwards. So what is your perspective, I guess, on manual therapy, and how do you feel that ties into the whole, like your strength and conditioning background and everything that you do?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think now is how I'm using it, the way that a lot of us that have kind of followed the evidence and understand, okay, there's maybe more to this than the mechanical, right? So like when I first started, it was all mechanical. We're breaking up muscles, we're lengthening stuff. I'm remodeling tendons. I'm realigning fibroblastic collagen production and all that kind of stuff. And then like, as I kind of look, but again, we were getting results, and at the time, and the mindset in the SEC, right, with those athletes was results by any means necessary. So like for me, like working with athletes exclusively and seeing the results, and again, a lot of that is how quickly can you get somebody to a level that they can go out and perform. So, manual therapy has a lot more efficacy in that type of situation, where it's not as much of a time factor or insurance billing it, or the other variables that maybe influence how we use specific modalities or tools. Fast forward to now as a business owner, and I really like getting hands-on with people because, as we've learned more about, the biopsychosocial model, and I think, we can't break up tissue, right? I think what's happened is a lot of clinicians have taken that as a reason for not doing manual therapy. It's like, okay, we're going to pain science. Pain's multifactorial. There's more to it than just breaking up tissues. But I think kind of what happened is we started throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and not realizing that, when you're providing a service to somebody, there's a certain degree of expectation that comes with somebody seeing us for service. And that's kind of what I think too now is like, is this person's expectations of care being met? And I think a lot of times, if we're just, hey, here's a program, here's what you need to do from an exercise perspective and get stronger, which is awesome. And I believe that. And I know that that's really where the progress gets made. But what I look at manual therapy now as the exchange. That's the exchange. If I'm going to ask somebody for money and I'm going to give them my time and my expertise, there has to be some kind of tangible exchange, not just a piece of paper with exercises on it. Right. And so when I make this joke, and I'm very demonstrative about it, is like, if you had a huge plumbing issue in your house and you called a plumber and he came to you and gave you the step-by-step instructions on how to fix it yourself and empowered you to do it, you'd be fucking pissed. Right? You'd be absolutely furious with that person. So it's like, we expect as therapists for people to come to us and just listen to our instructions. And I feel like when I'm treating somebody, that is my opportunity to provide the context behind the instructions, and as well as give them the perception of a value exchange. It's like, okay, I'm paying $200 for this session with Mike, and I got something from it. Mike gave me something, right? My energy, my time, the experience, which again is 99% of the value, but we also have to understand the person's perception of value, right? So my session in an hour looks like 30 minutes manual therapy. And in that 30 minutes, I'm strategizing. I'm asking them about their life. Hey, what's going on? Like, sometimes it's a little bit more social and just us having a good time and having and reframing a rehab experience around a pleasant experience. Sometimes it's us kind of like digging deep, and it's deep patient education stuff, pain science stuff, movement science stuff, progressions, regressions, modifying lifestyle, maybe we're tweaking things in their program. And then there's the actual physical part, which is I can change context of tissue, neurologically speaking. And if maybe I'm not doing it from a mechanical perspective like we used to think, at the very least, they see a difference. So what does that do for the frame of reference for somebody? Experience-wise, their frame of reference around their injury or their condition now is completely altered, just like mine was 20 years ago when Andy put me on the table, and all of a sudden I can straighten my knee all the way for the first time. And I was just like, my mind was blown. I was pissed that I hadn't gotten there sooner, but I was just so incredibly grateful that somebody was like, hey man, did you try this? Let's do this. And I think that's part for me now. I'm like even just getting emotional just thinking about it. But it's like the part now is I get to give that to somebody, that experience. So you can say manual therapy sucks, all this bullshit, but the reason it's impactful for me is because it was impactful for me. It helped me turn the corner. That's the part that people don't get. It's like, I'm not, but again, I think, and part of what I'm trying to do with my new course that I'm releasing in this fall is, I think the people who have a hard problem with manual therapy, it's not so much the practice of it, it's the narratives that get wrapped around it. So kind of my goal for my next course is like, and again, I'm going to call it an evidence-based manual therapy course. And part of that's the marketing part of it is like, oh, fuck, evidence-based manual therapy is like, is that a thing? Because everybody thinks it's not a thing. But it's just like, let's update some of these narratives so we can have a conversation with people like this about what it actually tangibly can do and what it isn't doing, and being honest about that. And then honestly, people appreciate that. Hey, you don't need manual therapy. I tell before I even swipe the card, you don't need treatment to get better. I can coach you to get better, but it can help a lot. So I like to use it because it represents a bit of a turbo button.
I love that, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for being passionate about it. I don't think we can put 3 times on the show anymore. There's too much emotion and hands and everything,
Right.
No, man. But
Well,
I
I
mean,
was
what
really
you
just going to say, Mike, you are a title in my book. I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, those hands were going.
I didn't even notice it. Yeah, if I had to sit on my hands, bro, I wouldn't be able to get a word out.
With your hands, you speak this way,
Right.
No, man.
Now I'm all self-conscious. I'm going to sit on my hands. I'm like not going to be able to speak.
I know. I try to cross my hands sometimes so I don't knock the mic off my table. But no, I really appreciate your viewpoint on that. And I think to me, when you share that idea of like the plumber coming over, it's like, hey, I can show you how to fix this. It's like, no, it's not what I hired you for. Right. So I think setting that expectation, and I love that word too, like in care, like seeking people, like what do people want? Right. And that's the thing I've tried to learn over the years is, I think I sometimes got too handsy in the beginning of my career. Like I just assumed people wanted manual therapy from me. And then after a couple sessions, it was like, oh, hey, like, why are you here again? What did you come in for? And they're like, I just wanted you to tell me I was okay and that I could move and,
Right.
teach me a little bit more about pain. And I was like, whoa, I have not been doing that. So I think that expectation factor is really, really important. So
And that's
thanks for
kind of
bringing
like,
that up, man.
like meeting people where they're at, right? Because some people, like I'll get some clients every now and again that it's like, you really don't need any manual therapy. I mean, we're going to do a little bit of it because it's part of like what you're expecting because you've done your research about what we do. But it's like, we're going to spend most of this time moving and teaching you how to move, So again, it's not like 30-30 always. It's like, I kind of like the ability to, sometimes do more of it, sometimes do less of it. And then the whole program is guised around like, I'm going to, over the next 8 to 16 weeks, wean you off of me so that you can be completely sustainable on your own. And it's like, wait, what? People can have autonomy and sustainability and do manual therapy? It's like, yeah, they can coexist. It's like, well, because some people just like the treatment part. I have clients that come just exclusively for manual therapy because it's now become part of their self-care routine. It's become part of, they genuinely enjoy the interaction. They enjoy the time on the table. They feel better. They feel like, okay, I'm good to train this week and I'm not going to get hurt. It's like, we got to remember, it's like, yeah, what people want, what they need. And our job as a clinician is kind of blend those two things together so that they're getting what they need when they need it at the time that they need it. And then we can kind of show them that progression.
I love that. I really resonated with throwing the baby out with the bathwater analogy there, because I think our industry, right, like we've shifted so much once the research came out that we can't make tissue change, right, with our hands. Everyone's like, you don't need manual therapy anymore, but we neglect the fact that like it actually does something, right, whether it's from a neurological standpoint or some other reason. So I think having that combo of manual therapy with the loading portion of things is extremely powerful. And I think the other reason why PTs and people in our industry are cautious with it, or they say don't do it, is because you don't want to create that reliance factor. But if someone wants to do it from a recovery standpoint because they enjoy it and they want it as part of their self-care routine, like why stop them? It doesn't make any sense.
It's like there's so many more harmful things that they could do, to recover faster. It's like, oh yeah, go ahead and take some HGH. Like you could do that. That'll help you recover, right? Evidence-based. But there's certainly some more downside than getting a massage a couple times a month, or getting some, soft tissue or instrument work. That's one of the other things too. It's like, I always try to evaluate downside when it comes to like a treatment modality. I think a lot of times we're always looking for, what does the evidence say? And it's funny because I actually literally just made a post about this yesterday and a post a while back where I talk about, I think the new shit talk, right, on social media is like, I got a research paper that refutes what somebody's claims are. And so I'm going to call you out and have this be some like confrontational, conflict ridden, people and negative, and people just are attracted to that, which is crazy to me. But that's kind of what people are into now, is like, well, who's got the evidence? You know what I mean? It's just like, you can go find research to support anything. So if somebody says, oh, manual therapy is not evidence-based, it's like, well, why really? You're really just going to refute the entire body of evidence that would be pro manual therapy. It's like, that's called confirmation bias, right? In Research Methods 101, we learned that that's bullshit. You're not supposed to do that. Or cognitive dissonance, right? You're just ignoring what you don't want to hear. And I'm not saying, okay, I'm going to put people on, and again, I think part of it is there are the people out there who say, I'm going to realign your spine and don't do anything and don't ruin this. And so that's the narrative, right, that I'm talking about, that needs to be updated. And so I think what we're seeing is like the opposite ends of the spectrum kind of arguing with each other. And, you have the Adam Meekins arguing with like, the hardcore ART people. Because I remember when I took ART, it was like, I resolve this condition in 2 sessions or less. And you're like, holy fuck. I'm like, well, I must be doing this wrong because I can't do that. And I'm like, I'm going to get to that point where I can resolve this. And, I know some local providers who are like maybe some ART, instructors and fucking great, great people, but believe that. But believe that they can fix people with their hands. And so I think that's kind of the argument, is like, okay, maybe that is a little ridiculous, and it is, and I agree. But I don't think we just, get rid of the entire practice, because it's a great way to help people that isn't drugs and it's not surgery, right? I can give somebody some manual therapy for 30 minutes and it gives them some pain relief, even to a fraction of the level of a cortisone injection. Knowing what you guys know about those things, what would you pick? I would pick the manual therapy. I don't want to blow out my Achilles tendon, or degrade connective tissue. But again, we have to always evaluate downside. And I think that's just not something we do enough of. There's very little downside to spending that time with somebody and treating them manually,
Yep. Yep. So with that being said, Mike, what would you say is your biggest piece of advice to your current injured athletes or to anybody out there listening who's maybe going through the experiences that you went through in high school, college, and maybe even beyond that?
The biggest piece of advice, man, that's so hard, right? Because I think that changed for me at different points in the process. But I think, like right now for the Movement Underground, our new tagline is "Be Unbreakable," and I think, and when I explain what unbreakable means to people, it doesn't mean that you don't have your issues. It doesn't mean that you never have pain or you never have an injury or a setback. It just means that no matter what happens, you move forward. You find a way to move forward. Doesn't matter what it is. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. If you can't crawl, roll. Do whatever you have to do to move forward, because there is no progress standing where you are now, waiting for somebody to come save you, waiting for some magical innovation to come happen to fix whatever problem it is. It's like you have to do the work. You have to find a way to do the work. And I think that is really the value of hiring a coach. Is like, I think a lot of people just get stuck in the minutia of trying to figure out and look at the research and what's going to get me better. And they miss the point that, it really almost doesn't matter what you do as long as you do something consistently. So whatever it is, find that something that you can do consistently and just execute it day in and day out and progress it as best you can. I tell people we're going to start with one linchpin at a time. So I'm just trying to find what's the biggest ROI for somebody. Out of all the possible adaptations we could train for or treat for, what is the thing that moves the needle forward the farthest in the least amount of time? Whether it has a direct causative or correlative relationship to their current injury issue. It's like, what is going to give them the highest ROI in the least amount of time? And I'm going to start with that. And then we can see how that affects their pain experience. Right? Because we don't know causal relationships for any of this stuff. It's like, we're all just trying to limit variables. So I'm just trying to limit variables and find the variable I think is going to be the one that swings the biggest door.
Very nice. Very nice. So Joe, you got any other questions for our boy here?
Only question I have left is, maybe it's not really a question, more of a statement directed at you, Mike. But tell the listeners where they can learn a little bit more from you and how they can, if they do want to work with you, how they can find you.
I'm pretty easy to find online. Proud of that. So Mike Stella _ATC is where I'm at on Instagram and X or Twitter. The YouTube channel is The Movement Underground. Again, that's kind of where you find all my free content, which is pretty much all my content's free right now. I'm working on some new courses, so they can find more information on that, on my Instagram. And the facility is located in Seaford, New York, so it's on Long Island. It's right on Merrick Road. So we're kind of like almost dead smack in the middle, on the South Shore. So, but we also do virtual, so if you think we're a good fit to work together, if maybe a specific sport outcome is what you're looking for, I think that's kind of like always been my wheelhouse, has been like returning athletes to competition. I would say has kind of always been my forte, is finding a way to put athletes back on the field and do so sustainably. So, we work with everyday people too. I think if it works really well for athletes, it works really good for Gen Pop too. Maybe it's just a little bit framed a bit differently, but that's it. TheMovementUnderground.com, or you can find me at Mike Stella _ATC.
All right, beautiful. Michael, thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you guys. This was fun. We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll
cheers.
Have you back.
We'll definitely have you back for round two.
For sure. Say less. I'm in. Even if you guys just want to do
Permanent
this
spot
and not put it out there, we'll just like hang out and just
Yeah,
chop it
I
up
love
and
it.
just be like, yeah, we'll fucking delete that file for the YouTube.
Oh, I'm good.
People are like,
Doc.
no.
I'm good. I'm gonna come be working out with you soon. So
Yeah, let's
we
do
can
it,
just
man.
record our workouts and our conversations.
Let's do it, man. Oh, that. But the last time we did that, it was like almost we just like shooting the shit, and we were like hard. We did like 5 sets. But it was great. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do curls. Joe, what else you got to do?
Yeah, but you know what? We worked hard during those 5 sets. That's all that matters.
100%. Yeah, it was a proximal failure. Maybe the jaw working the most, but no, it's always a good time. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for both of you for putting out great stuff, great content. I think a little bit more positivity around. We have more in common, I think, across clinical backgrounds than we have not in common, and I think people just need to remember that we're all trying to help people. Everybody has a different approach. It doesn't mean anybody's wrong or right.
Absolutely. I know. I agree with you. And thank you, Mike, for your time and coming on the show.
Oh, anytime.
As always, to close it out, guys, I love both of you, and audience, for those listening, love you guys as well. And if you made it to the end of the episode and listened this far, extra love for you.